You feel the sand beneath your knees, cold, wet, mixed with something darker that shouldn't be there yet. Your hands grip the katana so hard your fingers have gone numb, but you can't let go because the moment you do, you admit what's coming. The horizon is black not with night but with sails. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. You can hear the drums now, carried across the water like a heartbeat that isn't yours. Behind you, 79 men kneel in the same sand. You know most of their names. You've trained with them, eaten with them, watched their children grow. And in exactly 2 hours and 43 minutes, every single one of you will be dead. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that you chose this. Drop a comment from wherever you're watching. I'm always stunned this story reaches from Seoul to São Paulo, and I wonder how many of you would make the same choice they did. November 18th, 1274. The island is called Tsushima, a small piece of Japan that most people in Kyoto have never heard of. It sits in the strait between Korea and mainland Japan like a forgotten stepping stone. The men kneeling on Comoda Beach are samurai, but not the legendary kind you see in films. These are provincial warriors, fathers, sons, men who've spent more time managing rice fields than fighting wars. And they're about to face something that shouldn't exist. 20,000 Mongol warriors. The same empire that conquered China, crushed Korea, and expanded from Eastern Europe to the Pacific Ocean, an army that's never lost. An army that doesn't fight with honor, doesn't announce their names, doesn't believe in fair combat. They fight with something the samurai have never seen, something that will shatter their understanding of warfare in the next 3 hours. But here's what the history books don't tell you. These 80 men knew exactly what they were doing. They'd had time to flee, time to warn the mainland and save themselves. They received intelligence about the fleet days earlier, enough time to evacuate their families, burn their villages, disappear into the mountains. Instead, they sent one messenger to Kyushu with a simple message: "We're staying." Before dawn, someone would make a choice that doomed thousands. A letter, written in blood, would surface 200 years later, and the last person standing would be the one nobody expected. But what happened next broke every rule they thought they knew about dying with dignity. The fleet arrives at dawn. From the cliffs above Comoda Beach, the samurai commander, a man named Sukakuni, counts the ships until he loses count at 200. He's 34 years old. He has 3 daughters waiting in the fortress behind him, and he's just realized something that makes his hands shake. This isn't a raid. This is an extermination. The Mongol landing craft hit the beach with military precision that looks almost choreographed. Shields lock. Archers form ranks, cavalry positions behind infantry. Sukakuni has studied warfare his entire life, trained in the samurai academies, memorized the ancient texts. None of them prepared him for this. Because what he's watching isn't warriors. It's a machine. One of his men, Takazaki Suenaga, 26 years old, famous for his archery rides forward before Sukakuni can stop him, Suenaga follows the code of Bushido perfectly. He announces his name at the top of his lungs. He shouts his lineage, his clan, his family honor. He challenges a worthy opponent to single combat. The Mongols don't respond, they don't even pause. 30 arrows fly toward him simultaneously. Suenaga feels the first arrow punch through his shoulder before he hears the sound. The second takes his horse in the neck. The third would have killed him, but his armor deflects it into his thigh. He hits the sand hard, rolls, and realizes something that will haunt him for the rest of his life. They weren't aiming at him specifically. He just happened to be in the target zone. The battle lasts 17 minutes before the samurai realize they're not in a battle at all. They're in a slaughter designed by someone who understands mathematics. The Mongols fight in rotating waves. When the front line tires, they fall back and fresh warriors replace them. The samurai have no such system. They fight until they drop. Sukakuni watches his best swordsman, a man named Shoni Kagesuk, charge into a Mongol formation. Kagesuk is legendary. He's won 43 duels, never been wounded, trained since he could walk. He kills 2 Mongols before 10 more surround him. They don't fight him one-on-one. They stab him from behind, from the sides, from angles he can't defend. He dies without ever crossing swords with a single opponent. And here's the part that breaks something in Sukakuni. The Mongols don't dishonor Kagesuk's body. They don't desecrate it, they don't even acknowledge it. They step over him like he's a stone in the road and keep advancing. To the samurai, death in battle is sacred, it's poetry. It's the moment your entire life has been building toward. To the Mongols, it's Tuesday. Sukakuni realizes something that makes him want to vomit. His men are dying for a code that the enemy doesn't even know exists. They're sacrificing themselves for honor that means nothing to the people killing them. But there's something worse coming. Something the lookout spot on the Mongol ships that makes no sense. Large iron spheres being loaded into catapults, objects that seem to smoke. Sukakuni doesn't know what they are. Japan has never seen gunpowder. They're about to learn in the worst way possible. The first bomb lands 30 meters from where Sukakuni stands. For half a heartbeat, nothing happens. Then the world tears itself apart. The explosion isn't just loud, it's a physical force that throws sand and men and pieces of men into the air. The sound is so alien that some samurai freeze, trying to understand what their ears just heard. Sukakuni's youngest warrior, a boy named Michiasu, 17 years old, married 3 months ago, still clumsy with his sword, is standing in the blast radius. The historical records describe what happens next in clinical detail. Fragments of iron the size of fingernails penetrate armor, flesh, bone. Michiasu takes shrapnel in the face, the chest, the legs. He doesn't die immediately. He falls to his knees, tries to stand, falls again. He's calling for his mother. Sukakuni runs toward him. Another explosion. This one closer. The concussive force knocks Sukakuni flat. His ears ring so loud he can't hear the screams anymore, which is almost a mercy. By the time he reaches Michiasu, the boy has stopped moving. His eyes are still open. He still looks surprised. Sukakuni kneels beside him in the sand. Around them, the remaining samurai are breaking. Not fleeing, they would never flee, but fragmenting into individuals instead of a unit. Some charge the Mongol lines alone. Some kneel and begin composing death poems. Some just stand there, weapons at their sides, waiting. This is the moment Sukakuni understands the truth. They can't win, they can't even fight effectively. The technology gap is too massive, the tactics too foreign, the numbers too overwhelming. Every military principle he's ever learned has become obsolete in the last 20 minutes. But here's what he does next. Here's the choice that will define everything that follows. He stands, he raises his sword, and he orders the remaining 53 samurai to form a line. They're going to charge. Not because it will work. Not because it's tactically sound. But because if they die running toward the enemy instead of waiting for the enemy to reach them, maybe the messenger who escaped will tell Kyushu that Tsushima didn't surrender. That they fought until the mathematics made it impossible to fight anymore. 23 men follow him in the final charge. The rest are already dead or dying. They run across the beach and Sukakuni notices something strange. He's not afraid anymore. He's not angry, he's not even sad, he's just very, very tired. A Mongol spear takes him in the chest. He feels it punch through the armor, through the ribs, into the lung. He falls forward. The sand is cold again, just like it was at dawn. He can see the ocean from here. The waves look normal, like nothing unusual is happening. Like this is just another morning on Tsushima. His last thought is about his daughters. He wonders if someone will tell them he died bravely. He hopes they won't ask too many questions about what bravely meant in the end. The battle ends 3 hours and 11 minutes after it began. 80 samurai dead, the Mongols lose approximately 47 men. The mathematical efficiency is staggering, but the story doesn't end on that beach. Because what the Mongols do next will echo for 700 years. The Mongol commanders survey the battlefield and make a calculation. Tsushima has fallen faster than expected. Good. But the next island, Iki, and then the mainland Kyushu, they'll be harder. The Japanese will learn. They'll adapt. They'll prepare. So, the Mongols decide to send a message that will make the next targets surrender before the ships even land. They gather the civilian prisoners, farmers, fishermen, elderly monks, women with children. Over 300 people. The Mongols don't kill them quickly. They pierce their palms with iron spikes. They thread ropes through the holes. And they hang them from the sides of the ships like human banners. Some of the prisoners are still alive when the fleet reaches Iki Island 2 days later, still hanging, still visible from the shore, still screaming. A Korean conscript in the Mongol army forced to fight against Japan against his will writes about this in a letter discovered in 1967. He describes the sound, the way the prisoners' screams mixed with the wind, the way some Japanese defenders on Iki saw the ships approaching and threw down their weapons before the battle even started. He writes, "I understood then that war is not about who is stronger. It is about who can make the other believe they have already lost. The psychological warfare works. Iki falls in one day. Then the fleet moves to Kyushu, to Hakata Bay, where 3,000 samurai wait behind hastily built walls. The Japanese have learned from Tsushima. They've adapted. They fight in groups now, not as individuals. They've evacuated civilians. They've prepared defenses. For the first time, the Mongols face real resistance. The battle at Hakata lasts an entire day. Hundreds die on both sides. The Mongols control the beach, but can't advance inland. Night falls, both armies regroup, and then the sky changes color. The typhoon arrives at midnight on November 23rd, winds strong enough to flatten trees, waves tall enough to swallow ships. The Mongol fleet anchored in Hakata Bay is destroyed in 6 hours. Of 900 vessels, fewer than 300 survive. 7,000 warriors drown. The survivors retreat to Korea. The Japanese call it Kamikaze, divine wind. The gods intervened. Japan is protected by heaven itself. The legend is born. But here's what archaeologists discovered in 2011 that changes everything. A team from the University of Ryukyu found wreckage from the Mongol fleet at the bottom of Hakata Bay. They analyzed the ship construction, the wood types, the joinery methods, the hull designs, and they found something unexpected. The ships were poorly built, rushed. Many used green wood that hadn't dried properly, wood that would warp and crack in seawater. The Chinese and Korean shipwrights had been forced to work at impossible speed, building vessels they knew wouldn't survive rough seas. Some ships had mixed construction techniques that created structural weaknesses. The typhoon destroyed the fleet, yes, but the fleet was already half destroyed by its own logistics. The Kamikaze was the final blow to an invasion that was drowning in its own ambition. Sukekuni and his 80 samurai didn't know a storm was coming. They didn't know the Mongol ships were faulty. They didn't know Japan would survive. They only knew they had a choice between living with shame or dying with purpose. They chose purpose. And that choice multiplied by hundreds of warriors across Tsushima, Iki, and Kyushu bought Japan the 3 days it needed for the weather to turn. In the temple archives on Tsushima, there's an artifact that survived 8 centuries. A small wooden tablet, burned at the edges, with 4 characters carved into it. We held the line. It was found in the ruins of Sukekuni's family fortress, buried under ash from a fire that burned after the invasion. Historians don't know who carved it. Maybe Sukekuni before the battle, maybe one of his daughters after learning what happened, maybe a survivor weeks later. But someone needed the words to exist in physical form, needed to make the dying mean something beyond the mathematics. Japan never forgot Tsushima. For 700 years, the story was told and retold, each generation adding layers of meaning. The Kamikaze became proof that Japan was untouchable, divinely protected, chosen. In World War II, pilots took the name Kamikaze when they crashed planes into American ships, believing the gods would protect Japan again. They didn't. The gods never did. The 1281 storm was weather. The typhoons were probability. The survival was luck. But the 80 samurai were real. Their choice was real. The mathematics they faced, 80 against 20,000, that was real too. And the message they sent by staying, by fighting, by dying slowly enough for one rider to escape and warn Kyushu, that message saved a nation. Not because it was honorable, because it was tactical. Modern military analysts have studied Tsushima. They call it a catastrophic defensive victory. The defenders lost every engagement, every objective, every life. But they delayed the invasion by 3 days. 3 days for Kyushu to mobilize. 3 days for weather patterns to shift. 3 days that made the difference between conquest and survival. Sukekuni's daughters lived. They grew old. They had children who had children who had children. 17 generations later, a descendant named So Takamitsu was interviewed in 1987, 47 years old. A fisherman. He was asked if he was proud of his ancestors' sacrifice. He said, "Proud? No, grateful he didn't have to make the same choice. You're back where we started." Kneeling in cold sand on Comoda Beach, the horizon black with sails. The drums growing louder. But now you know what happens in the next 3 hours? Now you understand that the 80 men around you aren't dying for honor or glory or code. They're dying so one rider can reach Kyushu before the fleet does. Dying so the warning arrives in time. Dying so someone else gets to live long enough to see if the storm comes. The beach is still there today, quiet, tourist-friendly. There's a monument with 80 names carved in stone. And on clear mornings, fishermen say you can still hear something in the wind. Not drums, not screams. Just the sound of men making a choice that had no good answers, only consequences. Takazaki Suenaga, the samurai who took 3 arrows and survived, lived another 40 years. He commissioned a painted scroll showing the invasion, showing himself falling, showing his friends dying. People asked why he wanted to remember something so painful. He said, "Because someone needs to know it wasn't glorious. It was just necessary." If you stand on Comoda Beach at dawn and listen carefully, you won't hear gods or ghosts or divine winds. You'll hear mathematics. You'll hear 80 men facing 20,000. You'll hear the choice between running and staying, between surviving and meaning something. And if you're honest, you still don't know which one you choose.